Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. We had some technical difficulties with the Facebook. Welcome to hashtag Play On Breakout Sessions. My name is Sarah Swisher and I am the East Project Coordinator at East. And this is sponsored by Windstream.
And my name is Melissa Clemens. I'm the Student Training Coordinator at East.
And we're your moderators. So we'll be answering your questions in the chat and help troubleshoot any issues that you may have during the webinar. Take a moment to familiarize yourself with the options and the chat on your screen so you won't miss an opportunity to chime in. Most questions will be addressed at the end of the session during the Q&A section. Also, if you have any questions on whatever Tevin is talking about, feel free to drop it in the Q&A portion as well.
Yeah, so before we begin, we want to take a moment to recognize our breakout session sponsor, Windstream. Windstream is a leading provider of advanced network communications and technology solutions for consumers, businesses, enterprise organizations, and wholesale customers across the U.S. The company supplies core transport solutions on a local and long-haul fiber network spanning approximately 129,000 miles. Thank you, Windstream, for sponsoring this breakout session. If you're unfamiliar with East but have chosen to tune in, thanks. Here's a little bit about what we do. East is an educational nonprofit headquartered in Little Rock, Arkansas. We put industry-grade technology into classrooms so students can do online service projects in their communities. With 259 programs spanning across Arkansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Pennsylvania, we provide all learners with the opportunity to have relevant, individualized, and life-changing educational experiences. Joining us today is East alum Tevin Wooten. Tevin is an Emmy Award-winning weather reporter and an on-camera meteorologist with the Weather Channel. Tevin holds degrees in broadcast journalism from the University of Arkansas and meteorology from Florida State University with a minor in mathematics. After graduating from Florida State in 2018, he immediately joined the Weather Channel. Tevin has worked as a journalist and weather anchor in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and spent time as an EV-30 design intern with engineers at Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Welcome, Tevin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me, Melissa and Sarah. I'm so glad that you guys were able to wrangle me in the middle of this pandemic and also severe weather season. I was just telling the ladies earlier, it's very difficult to kind of block out some time oftentimes because our schedule changes so much day to day. And now that we have this on top of our hands or on top of our plate, we're juggling a lot of things going on. I'm actually in my home studio right now that was set up because of coronavirus and the effort of social and physical distancing. So we try to limit as many people as we can in and out of the studio. So I have my home studio here, but I'm also broadcasting to you guys. So this is fantastic. I'm so thrilled to be back with East, even in a virtual sense. I've been at a couple of conferences before, pre-graduation from high school, but also post-graduation from high school. But I can assure you, this is my first virtual breakout session to do with East Conference. So thanks so much for having me. Just a quick look at my background. The title of this session is From Small Town Arkansas to Network Television. It doesn't happen overnight. The small town part of that title, I am coming from Camden, Arkansas, which is a town of about 9,000 or 10,000 people. So depending on where you're from in Arkansas or Oklahoma or Pennsylvania or anywhere else in the country, 9,000 or 10,000 may seem sort of small. But for me, it was sort of a perfect fit because you want to sort of get a sense of, who you truly are around other people, but you're also able to find who you are as a leader. And that's sort of what East was very instrumental in allowing me to do. I was in the East program. I wanted to be in it my freshman year, but at that time, the class was at such a high demand, they kind of focused on juniors and seniors and sophomores. So once it was my sophomore year, I got to go and join the East program, and I wanted to go to conference. Of course, everyone wants to go to conference, but you can't take everyone, unfortunately, or most programs can't take everyone, unfortunately. So I didn't even get to go to conference my first year, but I did go the next 2 years. Loved every single second of it. Loved it so much, I went back my first year in college. So I went from Camden, Arkansas, learned a lot about East and technology. I was very passionate at that time with math and science, of course, but also passionate about journalism and TV production. Steve Taylor, who is an East legend, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of him. He was very helpful in sort of helping me figure out, what I wanted to do with TV, what was possible with TV and production, what was not possible with TV and production, because quite frankly, for a sophomore, junior, or senior in high school, yes, the possibilities are endless, but there are some limits as well. So you kind of have to figure out where you belong in that spectrum. So shout out to Steve. I don't know if he's watching, he's probably not, but thank you so much, Steve, for helping me out and figure out my way in the world in TV and in production. When I went to college, however, I, sort of focused on math and science. As Sarah and Melissa mentioned, I was an EV-30 design engineer for Marshall Space Flight Center and NASA in Huntsville, Alabama. And I'm thinking, engineering's great. You're going to make a ton of money, right? And that might be true for some of the older engineers or the more tenured engineers, but it doesn't, again, just come overnight. And so I did the design thing. I loved it. I loved AutoCAD. I'm sure some of you use that software in your East programs. But I got to college and I'm thinking, is this really what I want to do? I restarted up Hard Copy TV, which is our television production in high school. And I actually found a lot of joy and a lot of passion for me in that type of a project. And so when I went to college rather, I was able to change my major from engineering to broadcast journalism. And I lost several of my scholarships. My parents thought I was crazy. However, I was able to kind of figure out financially how I was going to finish the remainder of my time at the University of Arkansas. Go Hogs, by the way. And I certainly did figure that out. It was a bit difficult at times because financially, obviously, you have to figure out how you're going to lose an engineering scholarship, but still afford the rest of your time in school. But I want to go back to Hard Copy TV because that was a news brief that we did once a week in Camden, Arkansas. And I would be editing video until like 11 o'clock at night. Sometimes it was midnight, but I was so passionate about that project that we made it work. We didn't have the best technology. Now, we didn't have the worst technology. And of course, through East, as time goes on, you're able to get more grants and more funding and more technology to use, such as cameras and computers and hard drives and all the cool equipment that you need to make a really good production. And I was able to do that. And I like to look back, and a lot of my classmates would ask, well, why are you staying there so late? Shouldn't you be finishing that up around 5 o'clock? And while that might seem true, it might seem absurd that I'm there until 11 o'clock at night. I look at it one of two ways here, or one way actually. If you look at an athlete, professional athlete, or athletes that perhaps started when they were in Pee Wee football, for example, or Little League baseball, you start and you practice and you practice and you practice every single day, probably multiple times a day, especially throughout the summer when school is not in session, and you become the best athlete that you can be. Now, when you graduate high school, you go off to college, you play college basketball or football or softball or baseball or whatever, your practice doesn't stop. And that's one thing that I was able to take with me from high school, from my late nights in the edit bay to college. I would still have late nights in the edit bay, but you notice the progress or the transition of your work become a lot more better. So you have to be passionate about what you want to do, and that was television production. So I get to the University of Arkansas, changed my major from engineering to broadcast journalism, loved every single second of it. I remember walking down into the studio at the University of Arkansas in the Lemke School of Journalism, and they did not have a weather anchor. And I'm like, well, I think I can do this. I like math and science, so you can get some math and science from weather, and I'm good with numbers. And I also get to smile and be happy for the most part when you're delivering a forecast. And so I did that at the University of Arkansas, graduated there. I got an Emmy, or we call them, I forget what it's called, a student Emmy or a student award from the same organization that awards Emmys to news stations in the region. And that was sort of my catalyst or my jumping board to, okay, I think I want to do TV and weather full time now. I got a job before I graduated college at KNWA and Fox 24 News in Northwest Arkansas, was able to get another Emmy in conjunction with KARK Channel 4 in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Fox 16, because we were sister stations and we were doing a broadcast around Christmas time about the severe storms that were coming through. And so we were able to do a statewide broadcast and bring home the hardware, which was phenomenal. But throughout this entire duration, I am going through what is called an MMJ, and that was something, it stands for multimedia journalist. And a lot of people think, you know, when you're in TV, you get all these lights, you've got camera crews, and you've got producers. Well, when you're in a small market in Arkansas, you don't get all that. It's you and it's a camera. And so you have to know not only what you're trying to do in the end game and what you're trying to do for your broadcast, but you also have to know how to do a lot of everything. You have to be your own editor. You have to be your own photographer. You have to be your own producer too. And then of course you have to go on camera and report. So I would say that East gave me that foundation to do all of those things because I did it for 3 years in high school. And then I did it for several years in college at the University of Arkansas. So that transition from an internship at KNWA to a full-time position at KNWA, met Dan Scoff, who is a phenomenal meteorologist, and he inspired me along with several others to go back to school to get my meteorology degree. Because if you do want to be a meteorologist, it's more competitive, and you do want to have the foundation to become the best meteorologist that you can be. And it's not enough to just, you know, learn a few terms here or there, or it's not enough to take a couple of online classes. If you really want to get down and dirty with the math and the physics and the science about meteorology, it's going to require more schooling. And so much like when I swapped from from engineering to broadcast journalism, I uprooted my entire life in Arkansas, hopped in my Honda Accord and drove from Fayetteville, Arkansas to Tallahassee, Florida. I moved there not knowing a soul, not a single person in Tallahassee, Florida. Didn't have a job, was accepted into their meteorology program. So it's another undergrad that I got the undergraduate degree, and was able to persevere through, guess what, more math and science classes. It was quite interesting because the thing that I left in Arkansas in engineering in 2011 or 12 is when I swapped from engineering to broadcast journalism. Those very same principles of math and science, more specifically physics, calculus, chemistry, all those things that I left to go to broadcast journalism for, they came back when I moved to Tallahassee, Florida. So I had to go through calculus 1, 2, and 3, differential equations, atmospheric physics, physics 1 and 2, university physics 1 and 2, chemistry. Luckily, I had already completed. There was a plethora of STEM courses that you have to have as a foundation for meteorology. It's not just learning the weather, not just pointing at a map here or there. By the way, this is a fake backdrop that I've got in my apartment. You have to know the hardcore math and science. And luckily for me, I enjoyed it. Was it easy all the time? No. Is it ever easy for anyone all the time? Absolutely not. I can assure you Michael Jordan has probably missed more free throws in practice than he's missed in a game. But that's because he's practiced on those missed free throws and made the ones that have made him the great player that he is today. I almost flunked out of calculus 2. I have no shame in admitting that. It's a very difficult class. I almost flunked out. My professor said, well, what's wrong? I see you here every single day. I see you trying in class. You're always taking notes. And I said, well, I'm sort of new here, but don't count me out just yet. And towards the end of the semester, I made one of the highest grades on the final exam and passed the course. I think I made a B- or something like that because they have the plus or minus system there at FSU. So long story short, my senior year is quickly arriving at Florida State, and over the summer before my senior year, I had an internship with the Weather Channel. Now, if you've ever known the Weather Channel, if you've ever watched the Weather Channel, you know it is the major leagues of meteorology, I like to call it. And so you're coming to a place that legends have quite literally walked into the door. And one legend, Jim Cantori and Stephanie Abrams, both are still there. And I worked with them on a daily basis. And they are two amazing and phenomenal meteorologists to work with. But I had applied for an internship at the Weather Channel 3 times. The first time I got so close, but did not get the spot. The next 2 times, they didn't even call me back. The final time, they actually called me back. They extended an offer, and that was sort of the springboard to go from an intern to a full-time position at the Weather Channel the following summer in May of 2018. So I've been in Atlanta at the Weather Channel since May of 2018. I chased tropical storms, hurricanes, winter storms, tornadoes, every single thing you could possibly imagine, except right now because we're all stuck in our homes or in the studio. So we can't travel right now. This is the part that I miss the most. I love traveling. I love being out in the middle of the weather. And now I just feel like I'm a caged bird right now. I just really want to fly. Literally, I want to get on a plane, but obviously that's not safe practice right now. So we do our best to practice physical and social distancing. And we put health at the top of mind for a lot of people on our staff. So we don't fly right now, unfortunately. But overall, I think EAST as an organization, environmental and spatial technologies, you get this chance, you get this opportunity that a lot of students don't get. You get the opportunity to walk into a classroom and your teacher asks you, what do you want to learn about today? What are you most passionate about? And it's very difficult for a lot of students, especially in middle and high school, to find out what they're truly passionate about. You get the voices from your parents or from your family or from your friends that, oh, you're good at this, you should probably do this. And I'm sure your teachers have probably said the same thing. But until you truly find that voice inside of you, what you're most passionate about, that's going to bring you the most success and the most gratification in life. It's not the money, it's not the fame, it's not lights every single day. I don't feel like I'm on national TV when I am on TV every single day, because I truly enjoy walking to the building and talking about the weather and just being a complete nerd with other meteorologists out there. Find out what you're passionate about very early on. Focus on that passion. You know, it's not going to be easy when you start something new. That never is easy for anyone. You're going to have your failures, but it's best to have those failures early on than it is to wait 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 years down the line and you're constantly failing because you're not doing what you want to do. And yes, you will still have failures 10 or 20 or 30 years into your career. It happens to the best of us, but it's how you can brush yourself off and recover from those failures and recuperate from those failures. Only then you do continue on to become an even greater success. You learn from those failures too, which is so important. Like I said, I very quickly learned that when I was failing in Calculus 2, not to quit. Because if you quit Calculus 2 in the fall semester, you have to wait a full year in order to be able to take that class again. So you're going to be a year behind in college. Now in high school, it's a little bit different, but you still want to do your best. So we focused on the opportunities presented to us. We also create new opportunities for us. In EAST, it's very, I would say, unlike any other class. It's somewhat vocational. It's somewhat technology. It's a lot of technology, actually. It's a lot of creativity. And I know that there are some students out there that take it because it's a fun elective and they don't really know what else they want to do. But there are those others, about the 25 to 30% of you who are on this video call right now, not because you have to, but because you want to be on this call, or because you do want to join us live and you want to learn more insight into how you can grow your career early on. And I would say focus on that opportunity presented for you. Create yourself a new opportunity if you have to. And don't be afraid to ask anyone any questions. Your facilitator, the EAST HQ, some of the tech staff at EAST is phenomenal and great. Your community leaders can actually help you out in the long run. I remember doing several projects in the town of Camden. We have a historical society. And we teamed up with the Camden Historical Society, excuse me if I'm getting that name wrong, it's been about 10 or 15 years now, along with the Daughters of the American Revolution. And we teamed up to make this phenomenal historical piece on preserving some of the history, some of the voices of Camden. And we made this, I think it was about a 15 or 20 minute, almost mini documentary. Group of high school students just playing around with cameras that loved, you know, doing what we love to do. We were all friends in the bunch. One guy became the videographer. I was sort of the producer and or editor. We had a couple of other audio grips and someone who also was sort of instrumental in contacting these different organizations. And I know that a lot of you are doing the same thing in your community, but that's where it truly makes the best difference. If you can go outside of the confines of your classroom, outside of the confines of your school, and get into your community or your state or this country, quite honestly, because we see right now, even in time of great need and despair, you know, when we are in desperate need of ventilators, 3D printers are stepping up to the game. Some high school students are able to step up to the game. I believe in New York or New Jersey just last week, able to print a couple of pieces to help out some of the medical staff for masks and also ventilators too. So all the technology that you have, these are real world industry grade devices, computers, cameras, 3D printers, you name it, that you will see again in the real world. But because you've had it for several years in East, be it middle school or high school, and now even elementary school too, by the way, this is something that you'll become an expert on, and you'll have that leg up compared to, you know, your classmates or your peers or your coworkers, even when you get out into the real world. When we were setting up our in-home studio, one of the guys that set it up, he goes, "It seems like you already know a lot about this." I'm like, "Yeah, I sort of played around with a camera here or there." And I didn't want to say I did it, you know, for several years in Arkansas as a reporter and a journalist, but also for several years in a small town named Camden as an aspiring videographer and aspiring TV journalist. Do we have any questions right now? And by the way, I want to keep this informal as much as possible because I know that this is sort of a break for some people to not be inside a classroom, which I think is great. I hated being inside of classrooms. I'm like, no, get me out of here. I want to go explore and kind of figure out how I can make a big difference. So yeah, go ahead and drop your questions in the Q&A part, and I'll, you know, do my best to see some of them if you do have some. And I'm sure, I don't really know how this works with Facebook Live, if they also populate as well. But yeah, that's sort of my duration of time from Camden, Arkansas, then to Fayetteville, Arkansas, then to a quick stint in Huntsville, Alabama for NASA, and then to Tallahassee, Florida. And now we are in Atlanta, Georgia with the Weather Channel.
Hey, Tevin. So we have one question, and you may have touched on this earlier, but how long have you worked at the Weather Channel?
So I've worked at the Weather Channel on May the 14th, it will officially be 2 years. And so it was interesting when I walked into the Weather Channel, I knew everyone there because I had interned there. But it was for a different thing this time. I mean, as an intern, of course, they're guiding you a lot. They're helping you and showing you different aspects of not just behind the scenes, but also on camera, behind some of the numbers as well, and doing different social media things. But once I walked in as a full-fledged meteorologist and on-camera meteorologist, it was this sort of feel of, I think I did it. You always have that feeling of accomplishment, and I had that feeling of accomplishment, but I'm like, is this really real? There are days where I'm still not completely grasping that I'm on, you know, national TV with the Weather Channel, such a great organization and such an organization with a lot of history that is one of the most, if not the top recognized brand, I believe TV news brand for the 10th year in a row has ranked us the #1 brand in the country per the Harris poll. So, you know, we're beating out things like Walmart, which I know and love because I'm from Arkansas, and other familiar brands that you know and love as well. I was going to say that it's not enough for, maybe 20 years ago it was enough, but now it's not enough to do the bare minimum. For students, for students in high school, for students in college, and even as an employee, you always want to do more than you're asked, such that when, you know, the time comes to, well, we can do Tevin, we know he's going to accomplish this task, and he can do other things for us as well. And that's really, it's a really good sort of cross-disciplinary feel, or cross-disciplinary, what am I trying to say here? I'm at a loss for words. Anyway, I'll rephrase it this way. I have a mathematics minor, a meteorology degree, and a broadcast journalism degree. So, you know, if times were to change, if I weren't able to be at the Weather Channel anymore, I could support them in a different way. I've got the ability to, as a journalist and also as a meteorologist, because I'm able to go out and do stories, or even in the home, I've done a couple of stories here that I've been able to run my own camera and do for myself because I'm a journalist and I'm a meteorologist. That's not the case for everyone at anywhere, but the more that you can equip yourself to do, the better off you will be in the long run. What would have happened had I said, you know, I don't think I need those extra math classes, I'm not going to worry about it. Or I don't think I'm going to need those chemistry classes, you know, at the University of Arkansas because I'm going to broadcast journalism. I don't need that chemistry. Well, it actually did come back to help me out, because when I went from from Arkansas to Florida State, I had several classes already taken care of. So what would have been a 3 or 4 year degree, I was able to complete in 2. So you want to position yourself to be the best you can be, even without fully knowing what you're going to be doing in 5 or 10 years down the line. So don't pass up any sort of opportunity at all, please.
So one question, was there anything in particular that got you interested in wanting to work at the Weather Channel and work in meteorology?
That's a very good question. And unfortunately, like, I feel bad every time someone asks this. I don't have that one, crazy weather event or one tornado that I was able to point to say like, oh my gosh, I want to be a meteorologist. Because quite frankly, as you see from my background, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to college. I thought I wanted to do engineering, and I, gave it a good old college try, and I wasn't that bad at it. But I wanted to figure out something more. And I think the trigger for me was missing what I did in TV and in production at East that sort of helped me transition to, okay, let's go back to TV and broadcast journalism and production in college. Let's do it on a better scale. I will say, though there was not one particular event, I can point to, and I know that a lot of you perhaps can recall this, the Mayflower and Bologna tornado from April the 26th in 2014. That was a devastating day for much of the country, but also for the state of Arkansas. Luckily for me, I was already on that track to become a journalist, and I started to figure out I actually did like weather. So we were able to go, me and a couple other students, we packed our bags, and we packed the camera bags, that is, hopped in the car and drove from Fayetteville and went down to Central Arkansas to cover what was a national news story for several days. The Weather Channel was there. The president at the time was there. Of course, all your local news affiliates were there, and so was national media as well. But to take the initiative and do something like that was not required. Our teachers did not ask us to go down there. We said, if we're going to be a journalist, why not ratchet it up a notch and become even better journalists and go and cover real world things. So we're not just covering in college sort of, what the local student union or student government is doing or what the local football team is doing. We're covering things that national networks are doing. And that's sort of the same thing ringing true for East. I mean, you guys are building certain things perhaps for maybe your classroom, but I've seen stories where some students were building arms or legs for paraplegics, maybe in their school or in their community. And you're able to do that with the technology that you have in East. So I was able to apply it outside the classroom in college. And I know much of East does the same thing outside of its four walls as well, outside of the high school, middle school, and elementary school realm as well.
So this question is from the beloved Steve Taylor from Facebook.
He's actually watching.
He says, your path to the Weather Channel wasn't a straight line. You didn't stay with your initial college plan. What can you tell high schoolers about making decisions about college and career, especially for those who didn't have a clear path?
Oh, that's a very good question. Steve, I did not know you were watching, my man. So I would say stick with your gut, but make a smart decision for you. Don't make the decision for your friend. Don't make the decision for your family. If you are passionate about something, that's number one. Conference, talk to your mentors, see what their thoughts are. But I would say without a doubt, don't hesitate. I mean, I went into school the first time thinking like, oh, I've got to be an engineer because that's what my parents or my family or my community wants me to be. And quite honestly, engineering was fun for me, but it was not my number one passion. And so going from engineering to broadcast journalism, two completely different things. One's a Bachelor of Arts, one's a Bachelor of Science. So you're going from science into arts, which are sort of two different realms of life. I mean, you've got to be a creative in order to be in TV and in order to come up with the story on your feet. But it does require some knowledge outside of arts every single day. As a reporter and as a journalist, I mean, I've got to be a troubleshooter for my own camera sometimes, like, hello, and I'm still a meteorologist. So the path was not straight for sure, and I don't think anyone's path is straight. If it is straight, congratulations, you figured it out early on. But there's going to be some curves and some bends in life, just like even the greatest of rivers, like the Mississippi River starts off as a trickle and then streams on down into the Gulf of Mexico as this huge force of water, but it's not straight. It cuts through several different states, and in my journey, I cut through several different states. But getting to the Weather Channel, it's been completely rewarding. I don't think there's been any aspect of it yet that I've been regretful of. I am so happy that I went to the University of Arkansas. I met some lifelong friends there, and I'm even, I don't want to say more happy, or happier rather, that I went to Florida State. But I think it was very important for me to figure out, who I was in a big pond, or in an ocean essentially, because Tallahassee was much bigger than the town I grew up in, Arkansas. But I was able to go there and stake my claim and figure out, who I truly was and what I wanted to do. And so I didn't have someone over my head saying, you must do this, you must do that. You have to figure it out on your own. But that's where that passion kicks in, and passion overrides everything.
Presley is interested in learning more about your experiences in weather before starting at the Weather Channel.
Okay. It said Preston, right?
Presley, yes.
Presley. Okay. Like Elvis Presley. What up, Presley? Let's see. So the weather started for me, University of Arkansas. We had a thing called UATV, and they did not have a meteorologist or a student meteorologist, or what were we called, weather anchors, because they don't have a weather program at the University of Arkansas. I wish. I'm doing my best to figure out how we can get weather as a class or as a curriculum at the University of Arkansas. Hasn't happened yet. But they needed someone down at the studio. I was already there. Superstorm Sandy was moving into the Northeast and into New York State. I believe it's right around election time. And I'm like, well, I sort of like TV, and I can smile and I can be fun, but I also like the math and science. So give me a moment. Let me do my best spill into meteorology real quick, and I'll try to come up with something for tonight's broadcast. I think we broadcasted at like 7 o'clock or 9 o'clock. I don't remember. I think it was 9 o'clock. It was a really late night. But went through that, became one of the 3 main weather anchors that we had at the University of Arkansas, UATV. We didn't have the best technology, by the way, guys. We had, I forget what the graphics program was called, but we didn't have any weather software. So it was essentially up to me. So sometimes I'd be pulling maps from the Weather Channel, from weather.com, and putting them on to the TV. But when it came to, what was our Arkansas forecast going to look like, I was able to rig up like Adobe Photoshop and create this blank map of Arkansas with all the different counties in there. And then an hour before the broadcast, I would go in and punch in the high temperatures and low temperatures for the day. I'd create a 7-day forecast where I could change the temperatures. But this wasn't something that the University of Arkansas taught me. This was something that East taught me back in high school, because I knew what Adobe Photoshop was. And I'm like, oh, this is my jam. Let's just go through. And, I forget who says this quote, but it's do the best you can with what you have or what you've got or something like that. And it's either FDR or JFK. I'm sorry, I don't remember. Look up the quote, but it's so true. Like, you're going to have to do the best you can with what you have, and you're not going to have the best technology sometimes. That's okay. It doesn't take the best technology. To create Photoshop graphics hours before the broadcast, to still go on and do a bang up job and come out with this great product for not just me personally, for my reel, but also for the University of Arkansas. That was extremely rewarding for all of us. So finished at University of Arkansas TV, and then we get to, let's see, dance golf. Again, one of my mentors, Greg D, Janice Huff. I hope I'm not leaving anybody out, but they were then my mentors into, okay, well, if you want to do this full time, you're going to have to go back to school, because they had gone through, Janice went to Florida State, Greg went to Florida State, Dan went to OU in Norman, Oklahoma. And so they were all degreed meteorologists, and they have a decades-long career. I think Janice has been doing this in New York for 25. Greg's been doing this for about 15, and Dan's on the order of about 20 to 25 as well. And so they knew, and I trusted my mentors too. And that's what also comes into play here. If you trust your mentors sometimes a little bit more than your parents, don't tell them my mom or dad, but it does end up on the good side if you're listening to the right crew of people. And it might be difficult to know who the right crew is, but if you look at their career and you're able to judge and say, well, clearly they've had this going on for quite some time, they know what to do. That's instrumental, and that's important. So I listened to Dan. Dan was able to hook me up with an internship. That internship was only a couple of months. It was unpaid. It's going to take that for a lot of you because that's the world that we live in. Get those unpaid internships out of the way as soon as possible. Have a couple under your belt with different organizations. It doesn't just have to be TV news. It can be, with a local church or some sort of community organization. East could probably hook you up with internships if they know who to call as well. If you live in Northwest Arkansas, Walmart, Tyson, JB Hunt, all these great organizations that are out there. Intern, because the sooner you can get that experience, the long game will be so much easier. It will be so markedly easier as to how those connections are made and what I think your coworkers would actually be quite impressed once they figure out, wow, this kid knows a lot. But to finish up that question, Dan hooked me up with the internship. We did that for a couple of months. It came down to it where the internship ended. He's like, hey, if there's ever a big weather event, you want to come back in, let me know. And that's when the April 24th tornado happened in 2014. And I went in, I was watching him at the weather center. I was watching him on the weather wall. And I remember calling up a crew of friends like, hey guys, let's load up the car and go down and tell stories in Central Arkansas. So we made the 3-hour drive, drove down, did that. I'm like, okay, weather and storytelling, those are my two main things. How can I combine those? I knew that I liked it. I was all right at it at the time. Get to Florida State. Florida State was solely a meteorology degree with a mathematics minor. It was no journalism involved at Florida State. So I've got a strong meteorology degree and I've got a strong journalism degree. So when it came to the Weather Channel, they like when you can do both. And this goes back to doing as much as you can with the opportunities you're presented. If you can get different things under your belt and not just the one thing you want to do, you'll be so much more marketable. Marketable. Remember that word.
Thanks, Tevin. This is from Josh from Facebook. He says, we have a lot of seniors that may feel a little displaced currently, which they are about to make a big jump to the next level. Many may be relocating to new universities and cities. What advice do you have for an 18-year-old kid who's about to set foot on a new campus, town, or city, kind of like your transition to Florida State University?
Oh, that's a great question, Josh. And to those seniors out there that don't get the same experience that most do, first off, I'm sorry, because that you are missing out on probably 2 prom and graduation, 2 very large events that mark your senior year, and that's not happening, unfortunately, for a lot of students. For that's not happening, by the way, get creative and figure out what you can come up with. I think you'd be quite pleased with yourself. But as far as making that transition to college in a different city or in a different state, or maybe even in a different country, quite frankly, because I know that East can do that for a lot of you, be very specific and intentional on focusing on you initially. And that comes at a cost, because it's going to cost you maybe making friends or going out to some of those parties here or there. But you want to put your foot down very early, because the reason that you're there is for your education. Now, with that being said, forget everything I just said. Also find a strong group of friends. I was fortunate enough to know all 3 of my college roommates in Arkansas. Didn't know a soul in Florida though. So once I got to Florida and I was able to make friends with a group of people that, they enjoyed studying with me, they enjoyed, going to parties or hanging out. You do want to get that experience as well. And those friends, especially within your major, will be able to help you and you'll be able to help them. One great thing that I enjoyed about Florida State and being a sort of a nerd is that everybody else was a nerd, because you're not going to be studying in the library until 2 a.m. if you're not a nerd. Sorry, it just doesn't happen. But we were able to conference and sort of, help each other out. So if I did not understand a topic, then they could teach it to me. And if I understood a topic, then I could teach it to them. That's a good study tool that I think a lot of you should learn very early on. If you can explain it to your friend, then that's how you know that you've mastered that topic, especially in calculus. There's a lot of different rules and a different way to handle mathematics. And you're like, well, why are we doing this? Well, if you can figure out the how and the why, that will get you through. And that's not just true for math, that's true for engineering, and that's true for life. A lot of things happen and no one knows how or why. When you figure out the how and why, then you've got it. But yes, make friends, but focus on studying as well. If there is any sort of outreach organization, maybe any sort of diversity groups out there for a lot of people. If you've got a scholarship, a lot of scholarships do have maybe some sort of core crew of friends that you need. That's a good tool. Also make friends with your professors. Do not be afraid to go to office hours. It sounds intimidating. I had friends that were scared to go to office hours, but you would be amazed at the help that teachers can give you one-on-one, and they want to give you one-on-one because nobody else shows up to office hours. And B, sometimes they give you answers to the test in office hours. They don't directly push the answers in your face, but they might say, well, look at this example here. And they're sort of winking at you like that, and you're doing that example, and they're like, aha, you got it. You might see that question come back up again, but don't be afraid to go to office hours and do it before it becomes popular. Do a lot of things before it becomes popular. If you can go to office hours the first, 3 weeks out of the semester and then continue on, teachers love that way more than showing up the day before the exam.
Thanks, Tevin. Our next question is, what are some pros and cons about your job? And this is from Kylie.
Kylie, what's up? Let's see. Pros and cons. I feel like Jimmy Fallon, he's got that series like pros and cons or something like that on the show. Pros, obviously, I get to do what I love. I mean, I've traveled all over the country, mostly the Northeast, the Southeast for hurricane season, Northeast for winter storms, Midwest for winter storms and flooding. I've seen boulders like the size of my apartment. I'm not kidding you. In Niobrara, Nebraska, it's quite remarkable to see it tears down several buildings. I can explain how it happens, but we don't really have the time. But to answer your question, pros, yes, the traveling, meeting new people, being passionate or getting to do what I'm most passionate about every single day and not having to apologize for it. The cons, right now I'm young. So whenever a company calls and they say like, hey, we need to travel somewhere, I'm like, all right, my bags are packed and I'll be at the airport in half an hour. So I have to drop a lot of stuff sometimes, which is okay because again, you do the work on at the beginning and then it'll be so much more rewarding in the long run. That's a con. Those friends, by the way, if they're true friends, they'll still be there for you. What's another con? Let's see. Sleep. I don't get to sleep a lot. I think this is the most actually sleep I've gotten the past month or so, a month and a half, because I'm working from home primarily, so I don't have to worry about going into the studio, but we still wake up at early hours. And having a regular sleep schedule too for when we are traveling or for when we are full force in terms of getting our shows out. There are some days where I'm waking up at 2 o'clock. There are other days where I'm waking up at 5:30. And of course, you still got to get workouts in. You've got to be in the studio for a 4-hour show. Another con, and this is a really big one, but this is true not just in broadcasting, but anywhere throughout life, throughout any job or career. There are some days where I'm not the happiest, unfortunately, but I can't let that show. I still have to come on camera every single day, talk to America, give them their forecast, love on them, hug them, but from 6 feet away because, we got the physical distancing thing going on right now. But you still have to be that same you. And sometimes people can tell when you're not, and other times they can't. So con is definitely, you have to mask your feelings sometimes, but it's all right.
This comes from Facebook, and Jessica wants to know, what is your favorite East memory?
Oh, man, I don't know. Let's see. Well, first of all, and I know you're going to laugh, it's been about 10 years since it's been 10 years since I was sort of in the East. Let me see, 2020. Yeah, almost 10 years since I graduated from high school. So, geez, I don't know. I really don't know. I think the friendships that I built in East, like once you all start to click and you figure out like, not click as in going off and being a mean girl group, but once you start to click in terms of, oh, you're really good at this, let's maximize your potential on this, or you're really good on this, and you start to work cohesively as a team, and you see that the job becomes so much quicker. I think that life skill teaches you in East not only how to work as a team, but also, as a professional, when you do go out into the workforce, and you do notice the wheels are starting to spin and the engine's going and the train's going down the tracks at a much quicker pace because everyone's figured out what they're good at and what works for them. And of course, going to conference. Who doesn't like a good conference in Hot Springs, Arkansas, right?
This question comes from Presley. Do you ever sometimes wish you were an engineer?
You know, I think that portion of my life was, no, I actually don't. And I'll tell you why. I think that portion of my life was something that I thought I was good at and I didn't mind doing, but I wasn't passionate about it. I did, however, want to use engineering to eventually get me into outer space. I wanted to be an astronaut for a while, but then, you know, you have to pass all the physical inspections and you have to be like a doctor or doctorate or something like that. So depending on who you are, I think they took about maybe 2,000 applications last year and they chose 2 or 3. So I wanted to use engineering to get me in outer space is what I was trying to say. But no, I don't necessarily miss it. I just get to be creative in a different way now.
Another question, also from Presley, what would be your advice to East students? So I guess if you could say one thing to current East students, what would it be?
Oh man, I would say, wow. Other than being passionate, because I think I pushed that question out there or pushed that point out there a lot, I would say don't take anything for granted. Whether you're in a school that's gotten the Founders Award 5 times before, or whether you're in a school that just started up as a new East program, you're all going to have different backgrounds. We all have different walks of life, but you know, don't let what your people up the street, what they have, don't let that stop you from getting what you want. You know, if there's a way, figure it out. And there's always a way, so you can always figure it out. Don't compare yourself to anybody else, but certainly use that perhaps as motivation to figure out how you're going to get to perhaps that level that you want to be. But don't take anything for granted along this journey. I mean, there's so many different things and so many different people say, do you have any regrets? And I don't think they're regrets. They're life lessons and they're lessons learned. And be nice to your facilitators, by the way.
Another question kind of along the same line. This comes from Abigail. How do you overcome obstacles? When you face a frustrating or difficult task, what motivates you to keep going?
Oh, that's a good one, because I know that there are a lot of projects in East that you go through, you storyboard, you come up with these great theories, and you've got these fantastic ideas, and then you execute, and it falls flat on its face. So it's okay to sit in that failure. In life, you're going to have failures. It's okay to cry, quite honestly. That's a natural human emotion. It's okay to feel bad. But sulk in it, sit there for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, whatever it takes, or a couple of hours, figure out what went wrong, move on. You know, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. You're going to get another opportunity. No one's going to hate you for failing, especially while you're, you know, in middle and high school and elementary school. No one's going to fault you for it. Just don't break any technology. But it's okay to fail. You overcome it by learning from it. You overcome it by letting that be your motivation to succeed in the next go at it.
This is probably, we'll have time for one more question before this question, but this comes from Matt from Facebook. It says, which is better, a BCS ring or an Emmy?
Oh, this is Dozier. Let's see here. I can't put those two up together. They both sit on my cabinet right under my television. So I enjoy looking at the Emmy. I also enjoy the Cotton Bowl ring that we got as Arkansas beats. I believe it was Kansas State, New Year's Day in the Cotton Bowl. That was in Jerry World. I think, yeah, my first year in college. So 2000 would have been New Year's Day on 2012. I think the Emmy, though, honestly, because I was not on the field, you know, taking snaps like Tyler Wilson or whatever, but the Emmy, that was a result of, you know, my hard work, but also another crew of hard works as well. So definitely the Emmy, I think.
Thank you. And then this is our last question.
Oh,
Yeah, no. In East, we have it. This is Presley again. She's been coming through with the questions. In East, we have a big project that we are doing, and we make a lot of mistakes, and our groups get down. What are some ways to get our spirits back up if we fail?
You know, I've never thought about that. That's to get your spirits back up. Not if you fail, but when you fail. I think maybe like you guys should like all take one sticky note and write like why you think it failed, but don't put your name on it. And then like kind of just put it all in a bowl and see collectively what everyone thought the group failed at. And it quite honestly might be the same thing. It might be something completely different. I don't know. Who knows? But like, maybe laugh at yourself, laugh at why you failed, or laugh and then learn from why you failed. Like, don't just sit there and mope at it, because you're going to have failures in life and relationships and jobs and East. Like, failure is a part of life, for real. But laugh and learn and live.
All right. Thank you so much, Tevin. We really appreciate you taking the time out to come and, do this virtual breakout session with us.
Yeah, it's been fun. We should do this all the time, guys.
You do it all the time.
This is better than going to hot springs, right? Now I'm in my living room. I'm in my jammies. Got my Gatorade.
All right. Give us some parting words, Melissa.
All right. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Before you leave, don't forget to take the survey. The link is located in the chat. Our next webinar is How to Get a Job in Tech with Bryce Smith, David Kersey, and Sarah Daigle tomorrow from 11 to 12 Central Time. Sign up on the eastconference.org website if you want to participate in the Zoom chat, or you can just join us on Facebook Live on our homepage, and you can even watch it later on YouTube. So if you have any questions about East, just go ahead and direct them to eastinfo@eaststaff.org, and we'll leave those links in the chat for you all to copy and paste and get what you need. Thank you so much for taking time out, Tevin, and thank you everyone else for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.